Hey there guys, what's going on? So I've got one last little video here to do for you before we wrap up for today. I'm actually running a little bit short on time, as it were, as well as camera battery. Unfortunately, the battery has drained really quickly today for some reason. So we're going to try to just get right into it here and hope we can get this last little bit of stuff covered that I wanted to talk about today, namely Butch Walker, who I am not overly familiar with up to this point. I kind of knew him mostly because of his connection to Ryan Adams and the fact that they would kind of talk about each other a lot and kind of play music together and they were hanging out, kind of one of those music deals where it's like, oh, this guy knows this guy, friend of a friend, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's a, you know, he might be somebody worth noting or checking out at some point. It kind of reminds me a little bit of knowing Fiona Apple and seeing her on tour, and then learning who Blake Mills was as a result of knowing her. And I've covered Blake a little bit here on my channel, and that's just how you get to know one person to another and things like that. So that's sort of how I got to know Butch Walker. And recently an announcement came out, kind of this past weekend I suppose, that he was releasing his next record in February of 2015, and there was a single out already for it called Chrissie Hynde, yes, like the lead singer of The Pretenders, just like that. And it was going to be sort of a change in sound, a change in direction a little bit for him, kind of moving forward with life, but looking back on the past, saying goodbye to the past, kind of a transition, kind of a feeling as in regards to lyrics and things on this particular record. So I was definitely intrigued by the thought of the content of it, and it was produced by Ryan Adams, so that's a big plus, of course. I love the production work he's done with the likes of Willie Nelson in the past, just off the top of my head. And, you know, that immediately draws me in, and that is, as well as contributions from Bob Mould of Husker Du and Sugar and his own solo career fame, and Johnny Depp, because Johnny Depp, who seems to be known more as Johnny Depp the musician and less as Johnny Depp the actor lately, which is kind of an interesting about face, I suppose, as well as Mike Viola, who has been in music news and such a lot lately for working with Ryan on his previous, it was solo record that just came out at the beginning of September, and they've been touring around, and they're very good friends, and everybody just connects, and, you know, over and over. And this particular record was recorded at PAX Am, actually, right in the studio. And actually, hold on, because I want to tell you the title of the record, and I wanted to make sure that I remembered this. Okay, I did have it right. It is called Afraid of Ghosts. I wanted to make sure I had that correct before I went blathering on and goofed it up or something like that. And the lead track is really excellent. For not knowing Butch's other material, really knowing him as a solo artist, I guess he is more of a producer for other people, kind of like a Blake Mills again, as I read this morning. I was doing a little bit of research on him. But he's known for a nice little solo career too. Really just so much Ryan all over it, which is a great thing in terms of Ryan's production style, kind of the airy sounding drums and the guitar feel to it, kind of spaced a little bit, held back a little bit, but very melodic and very just immediately just the sincerity of it, just the feel of it can kind of just take you someplace, which I think is just really, it speaks so well for what's to come for the rest of it. The single is just immediately like capturing, it penetrates and just kind of like takes hold of you from the first couple of listens, which just immediately sucks me in, of course. And I love what it was being said about this record was that they went really back to the basics of it, really basic tracking, not a lot of really fancy, all, you know, pushing buttons and all this studio work, kind of just going back to the old days and the way it used to be done, and really basic. I don't want to say like 4-track or something. I want to see, maybe I still have it up, the passage that I was reading, because I like these kind of things when artists will just kind of go back to shaping the clay, if you will. And yeah, all live, all to an old tape machine, no computers, no fixes, just music. And I like when guys either A, feel comfortable enough, or B, just feel adventurous enough to just let it speak and let it breathe like that. It kind of reminds me actually of reading about Jason Molina's final, I believe it was his final Songs Ohia album, Didn't It Rain, which is a masterpiece and is going to be reissued by Secretly Canadian coming up on November 11th. And just what a spontaneous record that was. There wasn't a lot of overthinking it. There wasn't a lot of tracking this, and this. He had the thought going in that it was just going to be off the cuff, and whatever they did, if there were mistakes, if there were little touches, they let the moments in the studio and they let the moments kind of happen as they came and didn't really try to make everything filled with polish. And you can hear like Jason directing the other musicians or doing little things like that just to kind of lead it, because they didn't know. It was just people kind of in the room just kind of improvising or doing what they were doing. And I love that kind of thing, and being comfortable and okay with reaching out there and taking that kind of a chance, so to speak. And I think that gets me even more excited for something like that, because it really it's just music. And I think when you get right down to it, that's all that matters with this kind of thing. And this lead single Chrissie Hynde, really good. It sparkles with Ryan's production magic as well as Butch's own sincerity and just outright skill as a solo artist. I don't know him that well yet, but from these first couple of songs that I've gotten to hear, this one and just kind of going on YouTube a little bit, I like what I'm hearing, and I wanted to do a little video kind of at the last minute to talk about that here today, because I think you guys got to go and check that out. It won't be until February 2015, even later than the Lombella release that I talked about in the last video, but it is definitely worth giving a listen to, and definitely pre-ordering or kind of bookmarking it and saving it for later and remembering, because I think that is going to be a pretty awesome little contender when 2015 rolls around as one of the better ones of the year. I'm going to call it now and say it's going to be on some lists, I think. So definitely go listen to that. It is Butch Walker with his lead single Chrissie Hynde off of his February 2015 album Afraid of Ghosts. It is over on iTunes, and I'm sure you can get information on his social media stuff, web pages, all that kind of thing. Go and check that out. Keep it here for much more soon, guys, and stay tuned.